about what you're expecting about the overall experience going to Austin to play?
Well, a lot of history and just a great experience for our players. I've been to Austin once before as a player. I know BYU's been at least one time I remember. But, you know, when you consider maybe in the world of who are the haves of college football, you know, in terms of the glitter and the budget and the et cetera, you'd probably think of Texas and Oregon in terms of the number of resources they have. And so I think it'll be fun for our players to not only, after they've heard about all the things that Texas has as a program and reputation and tradition, to see that and then measure themselves against the players and see if those things match. And, you know, that'll be fun.
They show they're not a team that's afraid of doing trick plays. How do you prepare for that?
Yeah, the tradition from their coordinator is, and why they're very successful, again, I keep linking back to Boise State because those are his roots, but in already going through the film, there are multiple plays that are very unique and different. And in talking with Gary Patterson, the last 2 years before they played Boise, they had prepared for trick plays each and every game, and the ones they saw in the game weren't the ones they'd prepared for. And at one point, I think they had a file of 50 trick plays, none of which were the same ones. This was TCU preparing for Boise State. So you'd try to do your best just to play sound defense if possible, but to predict which ones we're going to see and when, hard to say. There is a tendency for them to show up in the red area or blue area getting ready to score from, you know, minus 30-ish, but you're not always positive where they're going to come.
Looking back at the Ole Miss game, what did you learn about your offense and what needs to improve?
What I did learn is they're capable. The number of drives that were put together that had some momentum maybe exceeded that of what I thought. The number of drives that were finished actually wasn't what I thought. I thought we'd finish more drives. And so just simply the consistency and the execution, once the volume of plays gets to like 7 to 10 plays right in there, when that volume started to get reached, we started to make a few mistakes. So being able to sustain drives longer and finish drives, which just leads to more efficient execution, more repetition, and we don't have much more time, but we could use a little more time.
Coach, this will likely be the biggest crowd BYU's ever played in front of, twice as many maybe as we're at Mississippi on Saturday. How do you prepare your team for that kind of an environment?
Not really any differently. Just tell them it's going to be a big crowd and enjoy it, and then go play the game. And besides warm-ups and maybe when you come out of the tunnel, that's usually when you notice the crowd. The rest of it, it's not much difference between 60 and 80 or 100. At least for players and coaches, I think you notice it more before the game. Anything else?
Coach, Texas ran the ball well against Rice over the weekend. You have the defensive keys to stop the run. Do you expect anything to change between the Texas game against Rice, against BYU?
Well, I think Texas had a nice plan, and they not only ran the ball well, they ran it for, I think, over 200 and threw it for over 200, 500-something yards of total offense under a new coordinator is pretty impressive. So they had great balance. And the diversity of what they do, not only can they run the ball between the tackles and have a nice plan that way, but they really have a nice plan to try to run around you. And most of their big play yardage came running around the opponent, not through the opponent. And so we'll need to make sure our edges are secure. A lot of the running game is similar to what we saw at Ole Miss in terms of fly sweep and putting a wildcat player back at quarterback, etc. They just happen to be maybe more advanced currently in down the field throws and play action and multiple formations than what we saw in week 1.
Coach, in the back, what's this past week say about your team, you know, in terms of its, you know, resiliency, knowing you can come from behind on the road and win?
That was it was one of the most gratifying victories since I've been the coach. It was the largest deficit we'd overcome since I've been the coach. That's 6 years in one game, going back to an 11-point comeback in New Mexico my first year, and it meant as much, if not more, than any of the victories we've had because of that. And there wasn't a lot of panic on the sideline even through the end, and that's, I think, will show maybe a deeper commitment and the right kind of mindset collectively as a team that will battle to the end. And a game like that, one or two plays made the difference, and we just happened to make the one or two we needed at the end of the game.
Kind of leading off that, does that change the way you frame improvement to players, winning as opposed to losing that game?
Sure. Coaching is a lot. Well, coaching, I think, is nothing other than teaching, and teaching requires teachable moments and people that want to be taught. And a lot of times, based on the team that you have after a win, players are actually less teachable, and they're more teachable after a loss. So there's always a fine balance, going to your question of when you win, how teachable will they be? Well, when you win, having come from behind in kind of the last hour of the game, so to speak, that teachable moment is still there. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a great victory, and you also know what defeat could have tasted like because you were behind most of the game, and there's this sense of relief that, boy, I'm glad we won, but there's a lot we can improve. And so our focus has really been on great job in terms of the resiliency and the heart and the grit and determination, and now let's focus on the things we can actually do not to be in that situation again. And
So 1 point game's ideal?
I don't know if it's ideal, but it's not a bad way to start.